Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, February 25th. It is 1:08. I'd like to call the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners meeting to order. Lieutenant Tully, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Saraceno,
Present.
Commissioner Jenkins-Gray,
Present.
Commissioner Artiga,
Present.
Commissioner McVeigh,
Present.
Mayor Spencer,
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Thank you. If you may, if everybody's capable of standing, could we please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? Join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. Have a seat. Thank you all. So on our next agenda item, we're looking for approval of the February 4th minutes from the board meeting on February 4th. We have a motion from Commissioner Artiga to approve the February 4th, 2026 minutes. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Commissioner Sonia Gray for approval. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move for a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to number 5, our committee reports. Our first agenda item on the committee reports will be Budget and Finance and Audit. Commissioner McVeigh, could you please give us an update?
Thank you, President Saraceno. As treasurer of the board, I move to adopt the resolution certifying an estimate of the sum of money necessary to meet the expenses of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department for the 2027 fiscal year as mandated by revised statutes of Missouri, Chapter 84. Lieutenant Tully, will you please read this resolution?
This is Resolution 26-08, whereas the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners has determined it to be in the interest of the board to adopt the following resolution. The revised statutes of Missouri, Chapter 84, Section 84.210 requires the board to submit an estimate of the sum of money necessary for the subsequent fiscal year to enable the board to discharge the duties hereby imposed to meet the expenses of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. And the department's director of budget and finance has worked with the chief of police, the department's directors, and other key employees of the department to prepare the estimate based upon the 2026 fiscal year budget and using the forms prescribed for the budget preparation purposes by the city of St. Louis. And the board desires to certify the estimate and budget forms attached hereto as Exhibit A. The board certifies the estimate and budget forms attached hereto incorporated herein Exhibit A, and the department's director of budget and finance shall submit the estimate and budget forms by the deadline set forth in Chapter 84, and that a copy of the estimate and budget forms shall be open for public inspection.
Thank you. So we'll move to bringing this to ratification to approve these expenses.
Yes.
I need a motion for ratification to do so.
I think Commissioner McVeigh moved.
He moved to, we need a second on that. Do we have a second on ratifying? So we have a second by Commissioner Ortega, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move for discussion regarding this resolution. Do we have,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Today, our goal is to certify the department's expenses to be submitted to the city by February the 28th as required by Missouri statutes. I want to note that this is a new process for the board. We have been working diligently over the last several months to identify the expenses needed to maintain the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. The transition to state control has raised a lot of uncertainty on expenses associated with buildings, salaries, and other items that we continue to work on with the city. The department received its preliminary allocation from the city on January 28th. The department's director of budget and finance then communicated with the city to better understand the allocation, as it was less than anticipated. Because we continued to work through the appropriate allocation amount with the city, the department's expense currently exceeds the city's preliminary allocation. While the department's expenses and the city's allocation do not currently align, it is our understanding that we have until June 2026 to finalize the budget with the city. We intend to work cooperatively with the city over the next few months to reach an agreed upon budget. This is the first step in a larger process between the city and the department. Open for discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes.
Open. Yes, Mayor.
Thank you, President Saraceno, and thank you, Mr. McVeigh, for clarifying that this is the first step. I want to speak to the budget as we received last night for the first time, sometime between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. And my team and I, along with the budget director and many members of the city, we've been working diligently to try to make heads or tails and to understand the budget as we have had less than 24 hours to digest it. On first glance, the budget includes over $48 million of additional expenditures above and beyond the budget as presented by the City of St. Louis. We presented that budget as was described on January 28th. We calculated and presented that budget with a letter from our budget director, Mr. Paul Payne, who indicated that the budget was built largely on the previous year's budget, including assumptions of modest growth of around 1.6%. And instead of calculating the budget based on the statutory requirements, the city calculated its budget based on what we believed the police department needed as it related to the year before. We calculated and presented a budget that, by our calculations, as was shared on January 28th, included more expenditures than are statutorily required, and we indicated as such. Now, the attorney for the board refuted that claim, and despite my numerous requests for additional information about how those statutory requirements were disagreed with by the board, I still, and the city has still yet not received any calculations or any evidence of how or why the police board is refuting our estimation that the budget as presented by the city's budget department exceeds the statutory requirement and largely reflects the budget of the police department last year with the additional modest increases that were described in a letter by Mr. Paul Payne. So my question, as presented to the board several times by email now, remains on the table. I would like to understand and request transparency in how the calculations were made that result in the assertion that the budget as presented by the City of St. Louis does not meet that requirement. But before, obviously, given that we don't have that before us, it hasn't been presented, it's not part of our packet, nor has it been sent by email to the budget director or the mayor who's requested that information or any member of the city departments. I have a few questions about the budget. As I mentioned, the budget as presented here last night to us for the first time includes an enormous number of additional expenditures. I would like to first understand what percentage of revenue the calculations suggest that this makes up. You mentioned, and Mr. McVeigh mentioned in his statement here, that the budget was made up by the required contributions. And so I am requesting what that contribution, what the total requested, or excuse me, total required contribution by the City of St. Louis to the police department is, Mr. Gravel.
Okay, so understand your frustration. You know, this is a new process for us. It's a new process for the city. We built a budget schedule that was based on what this would look like. You know, we asked for clarifications, and I know your team is doing everything they can to work through this, just like our team is doing everything they can to work through this. We really couldn't start our process until, you know, we got some of the figures that we got on February 13th sent to us. And what we were trying to determine is, what does the city consider general revenue? And what is, you know, because the city has $1.5 billion in revenue projected for next year, according to Mr. Payne's worksheet. And what is considered general revenue? Not the general fund, but what is considered general revenue. We still don't have that number of what the general revenue is for the city. It's not on the sheet, or we can kind of guess, but it's not identified what the general revenue is for the city. Essentially, what was provided by Mr. Payne is, starts at the 1.5 billion and it goes down and withdraws all these expenses before our percent comes out. Puts us kind of at the bottom. I think it's a legal issue, it's not a numbers issue. Are we supposed to be taken out at the top, or are we supposed to be taken out at the bottom? And I think what we've tried to do is determine where and what the numbers look like. And yes, we do not agree that the proposed allocation meets the statutory percent. What is that number? We don't know, because we have to go through and take all of these funds and look at everything that's stacked up in front of us and see, is that general revenue or is that special revenue? The courts have defined what that is. We've asked the auditor to assist us in looking at what this general and special revenue is and help us figure this out so that we can come back prepared and educated, because we're going through our budget process for the first time. We think this is a fair estimate of what we think our allocation would be, but also understanding it could be much less. It could be what you have.
Mr.
We're
Gravel,
trying
the
to
estimate
understand.
is $48 million above and beyond what the city has allocated with a modest increase. And with all due respect, Mr. Payne has provided those calculations, and with all due respect to your statements here, as you pointed out, this is new to you and new to the board. I'd like to invite Mr. Dave Daniels to come and address some of these. He's the budget director for the police department. He has been. We were told last night he would be here to answer questions on behalf of the budget, and I think it's imperative and incredibly important that he do so. Can he come forward and start to talk about some of these issues?
Mr. Daniels is not here today.
We were
for
told
personal-
last night, Mr.
for
Gravel,
personal
that he
reasons.
would be here today.
I understand that.
It's irresponsible to not do you have somebody else on his team that can answer these questions?
I will answer the
No,
questions. Mayor.
Mr. Gravel, as you pointed out, you're new to this. This is
No,
new to
no,
you.
No. Because,
I'm-
listen, if I can, Commissioner Saraceno, there's a lot of things thrown at me, let me
Yes.
respond. We don't agree with the allocation as a percentage of the budget, the way the statute reads. We're trying to figure that out in this process. We don't agree. It's a legal issue, it's an interpretation issue. The courts have addressed what is general revenue and what is special revenue. And ultimately, the statute defines when our percentage comes out. We're not trying to take this position that it's this. We certified our expenses. That's all we've done. We understand we have more to work directly with the city, directly with your staff, to get to an understanding of it. The math is not difficult. It is $1.5 billion minus special funds that are, the court has defined as non-ordinance based or non-charter based funds, but defined by statute, and then the percentage comes out. That's the way we read the statute, that's the math. We've asked for general revenue. If we had that general revenue, we could do a multiplier, but we have to agree where we come out, and we have a right to, and I think the board has a duty to assert their position based on the
But
statute.
Mr. Gravel, if the math isn't hard, why can't you provide it to us? And you're right. You have to take according to the state statute, you take the budget and you minus out those expenses. And Mr. Paul Payne presented that to you all on January 28th. We did our calculations. We
That
were
was
transparent.
that was
and we shared.
presented February 13th.
Well,
Okay, not January
if you
28th.
dispute, I'm asking for a respectful, any indication of what you disagree with the city about. And there
We
has
did-
been no response whatsoever.
I'll be happy to address that right now. When you look at the sheet that Mr. Payne gave us, what is the general revenue on the sheet? Not the general fund, but the general revenue.
The general fund is at $622 million.
Our percentage is calculated off general revenue, not the general fund. I think it is the net total of 807,747,814 in the second column. The question is our percentage come out there, or does our percentage come out before all those subtractions are made? That's what we're trying to figure out. In order to do that, we are trying to look at the legislation and everything on every single one of these funds and figure those things out, and that's what we're working through right now.
Well, how can you possibly state that this is not accurate if you don't have any information
I
to share.
didn't say it was accurate.
Okay.
What I said was, we're trying to figure it out, but we have to do our own calculation. But I think when you look at this column, it is simple math. You start at 1.5 billion, you take out certain accounts, certain funds that have to be taken out, and then at some point, our percentage comes out of whatever that number is. Is that number 807, 747, 814? Is that number lower? Is that number higher? We don't know. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Well,
That's the
okay, Mr.
process we're
Gravel-
going through
Okay.
that we've been spending since February 13th working on.
If you don't have, I was happy to hear some and ask some questions of your budget director to kind of go through some of these. But given that he is not here, I'd like to bring up the city's budget director, who's been the budget director for the city as long as the director of budget for the police department has been just about. They work very well together. They've been in collaboration and coordination under local control, under previous state control, and have an excellent working relationship. Mr. Payne, can you come up and help shed some light on the budget numbers as you presented to the board on February 13th? And answer some of Mr. Gravel's questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Paul.
Good
And thank you,
afternoon.
by the way, for working overnight to try to understand the budget that we're looking at here today so we can talk intelligently about it.
Sure.
I'd like to thank our director too, and the reason why he's not here is because he spent 3 nights in this building. So I appreciate his efforts as well as yours.
No,
And your
actually,
commitment to this city, so
As the mayor
so-
indicated, I've worked
yes.
with Dave Daniels
I
for
understand.
I've probably known him about 30 years. We work closely together. We work closely together on the budget. We have done before local control, after local control. He has a question, he calls me. I have a question, I call him. And we've got a good working relationship.
We thank you for your commitment.
Yes, the numbers are presented to the board, which I believe you should have. Starting with the total budget for I use both FY26 and FY27. I'll use FY26 as an illustrated example because that's an actual a finished number as opposed to 27, which is evolving. What it does is it takes the entire budget, which is the $1.4 billion, and it actually adds in those things which are separate from the budget. We do separate appropriations. St. Louis Works, we did some tornado appropriations, all of those things. So what are the total appropriations for that fiscal year? And added that up and it comes up $1.5 billion. Then as trying to establish a percentage of the allocation from that total, I've taken the position where you have to take a numerator and denominator. You were trying to come up with a percent. So you say, what's in the denominator and what's in the numerator to come up with that percentage? So if you start with the 1.5 billion, and then you look at what's excluded because of either statutory limitations or particular quirks in the budget itself. As I mentioned, statutory limitations would be some portions of the property tax, which are limited for specific purposes. The Convention and Tourism Fund, which is limited to convention purposes for state statute. There's also funds in here that are double counted. They're counted as transfers. So in other words, and I'll give you an example, like the Convention and Tourism Fund. That fund is budgeted in the Convention and Tourism Fund, and then those monies are transferred over to the general fund to pay the convention center debt. Well, that's double counting. That's the same one source of revenue. So you have to pull all those things out. And you can go down the list in a number of those special funds, most of them statutory. You got grant funds that also have to be pulled out, the airport, and then the internal services funds, which are also double budgeting. You're budgeting, payments of one department to another. So I've identified all of that. And once you negate all those figures, you end up with $825 million from the $1.5 billion originally. Now, as stated in the statute, you're supposed to exclude police pension funds, right? So that was $39 million, but it's not included in the police budget, but it says excluded from the calculation. So that means both numerator and denominator, you don't include it. That was $39 million. And additionally, separate from the pensions, but including retirement costs, that would be FICA, the ERS costs, which is the employee retirement system, as well as retiree health insurance, which is almost $15 million a year. That again, also subtract that from both sides. It's supposed to be excluded from the calculation. So you exclude all that from the denominator and you end up with $763 million. So now, that's the denominator. So what's the numerator? the total budget for the police, and you have the general fund budget of 150 million. You've got police contracts of 1.8. You got $21 million in use tax, $2.9 million or $3 million in gaming, and so on and so on. All these special funds. To that total, it adds up to $211 million for the police budget this year. You subtract all those, and that doesn't include pension, but it does include the retirement costs. So that has to be subtracted out. That's about $22.0 million, leaving you with $189 million. So if you calculate the 189 divided by the 763, you get 24.8%. That's the calculation.
Thank you, Paul. And so as the budget as we presented in January does represent more than the statutory requirement as calculated by Mr. Payne. And it's unfortunate that we don't have Mr. Daniels here to refute any of these line items. You're right, the math is simple. The question is, it's a simple calculation.
Can I ask a question?
Please go for it.
Okay. So Mr. Payne, you're talking about your sheet. Thank you for helping us, because this actually, I'm not a math guy, but help me understand, so bear with me here. You'll agree with me that you start at 1.5 billion. That's the total projected revenue for the city. Right?
Well, I just took anything that was appropriated, regardless of what the status of those funds would be.
Right. Okay, so 1.5 billion, and then you also agree there are specific funds that get deducted by state statute chapter 84 before the allocation comes out.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. You have identified what you believe to be those specific funds, correct?
It would be any funds that are restricted by statute, yes.
Okay, that's what you believe
Yes.
these are,
Mhm.
right? If we disagreed with you, it would, and say, for example, there was a fund that by law is considered general revenue, that would go back into this pile of money, right?
Theoretically, but again, you said if you disagree, but
No, let me say, I'm trying to figure out a way to ask you a
Okay.
question that's not offensive, Mr. Payne, the lawyer in me. But if we disagreed, let me try that, and ultimately there was a fund here that is actually by law considered a general fund, our allocation would go up, correct?
that would be a legal question.
It's a
Obviously,
legal
I mean,
question.
you might disagree, and our city council would also have to look at it as well.
It's not a math question, it's a legal question,
Yes.
right? And so there possibly could be legal questions about these deductions before the percentage is calculated.
Sure, but let me point out something else as well. There are other ones that could be that I'm not including. It could go the other way. Because these are just from funds. If you look more closely, and I know the comptroller's office has mentioned a couple things that I hadn't considered that are actually restricted that should also be considered.
Well, and I think part of the point of it, Mr. Payne, is, this is our first time going through it. We've had our struggles from time to time with trying to get our system set up and work within the city system. And I think the goal is to certify the expenses with the idea that now we understand the numbers, to work with you, to figure out, number one, work with the city councilor's office to figure out if all this stuff should be excluded, because it may change and could significantly change the appropriation to the police department by statute, right? If one of these were specifically by law not to be included in a deduction, it could have a significant impact on the allocation, right?
Up or down.
Yeah, it could absolutely up or down, right? And I think the goal is to get it right, to get this right the first time. And I think the goal is to discuss and understand these funds and these deductions and understand where the statute puts us in line.
But then one of the other questions that was raised was, what is the percentage requirement? Because this produces 24.8, which is actually in excess of what we're required. And there was a statement earlier.
Well, hold on. If the total general revenue was $1 billion, it would exceed $188 million, correct?
That's the question is,
Well,
what's the percentage?
well, I understand.
Well, there was some percentage that you had submitted in an email suggesting 23.5%, and I asked that question, where did that come from? And I didn't get an answer.
Well, Mr. Payne, that was my understanding in the first year, you did 23.5% for the first 6 months and the last 6 months because there was a split in the percentage.
Yeah, that's not in the statute, but
Well, no, that was how you guys practically worked it out the first time, and I think that was a question
That's
Dave
not-
posed to you.
that's not, and it was never answered. It was the first I heard of that.
Yeah, no, it was really just trying to work through stuff, so it was not meant to say that it's higher or anything like that. I think, really what the goal is we understand our expenses, we're certifying our expenses, we may have to reduce our expenses to get to a budget, but the idea that, we wanna make sure we're in the right sequence here, and we wanna make sure all these funds should come out before, our percentage comes out, so that it is good or bad, because I think everybody wants to get it right, good or bad, make sure our percentage comes out at the right time. And as you stated before, determining whether or not these funds should be deducted are legal questions.
Some of them, yeah.
Well, and Mr. Gravel, as you know, we put our cards on the table, and we were happy to do so. We were collaborative in doing so, and we have been requesting the budget department for the police department to do the same thing. And while this is new for you, Mr. Gravel, and for the commissioners, it's not new to Mr. Daniels. And Paul, as the budget director, read the state statute, just as Mr. Daniels presumably did, and worked out the city's perspective on that same question. We've all had this same question at the same time. Paul has 3 times the employees under his departments that Mr. Daniels has. I know these are tough jobs to do. I know Mr. Daniels has a tough job to do. But in the same way Mr. Payne presented and pulled this together and worked hard prior to February 13th to be transparent, to be collaborative, and to share and answer the questions that you've asked, we have asked repeatedly for questions to be answered on our end that failed to get answered. And that is not a collaborative way to go about being here for the first time to present this. And these numbers, the numbers we presented were largely and almost entirely based off of what last year's police expenses were. There was very little change except to increase them based on the projected revenue increases for the city of St. Louis, which are very modest, by the way. And instead, the budget as presented by this commission today includes an estimated $48 to $72 million in additional expenses to the city of St. Louis.
I understand, I think we're talking about a budget process for the board and SLMPD that may not be as caught up as yours with regards to where we're at, because I think our look at it is what the statute requires is we have, by the end of February, have to certify our expenses. The budget is not adopted until, by statute until July 1 or before July 1, with the idea that, yes, we are putting we're trying to figure it out. We literally have been trying to figure this out since February 13th. We still don't have a direct answer. I mean, I think this is the closest we get is this middle column, Paul, is that you're saying the net total general revenue was 807,747,814.
But
Fair
Mr.
enough. And
Mr.
so-
Gravel, to wait until we certified and sent ours over and to say you were waiting for that is ridiculous. Mr. Daniels should have been working on this in earnest, the same way Mr. Payne was working on this for months. We read the statute the same time you did. And Mr. Payne has been working on this in earnest as the same way that Mr. Daniels should have been doing the same. There was no reason for him to wait until he got numbers from Mr. Payne to come up with the budget for the police department. As I mentioned, it was based largely on last year's budget. The police department isn't operating wildly differently than it did under state control, nor do we expect it to. And if we do, that is news to me, and it's news to the general public. And so my point is, we presented those numbers, and and again, we have been very communicative, answer every communication, and that has not gone both ways, and that's been enormously frustrating.
Well, you've not answered my last email.
I'm
The
gonna,
last email, this was coming here today, but Mr. Gravel, that was after failure for you to respond to my email regarding this exact question.
if I'm going to interject here because the object, or what we were tasked to do was to bring an estimated necessary expenses for the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department by the end of this month. That was a large task, even though everybody who may seem to have cooperated or not cooperated, we are here now. Our opportunity is to submit this and to work forward with every party involved to get to a resolution that would work for all of us. That was our goal here today, was to meet the expenses that we feel were necessary for this department. So we can move forward. This is not we're not voting on a final budget for the police department. We are actually submitting our expenses to that. And just like I'm not going to speak on other departments because I don't want to do that. But I feel like this is what we have worked hard to do this. And every one of these commissioners, as well as Mr. Daniels, who has lived here for
Yes.
nights trying to get this done and tried to answer the questions. There was nothing held back, no information held back other than not getting it done timely for you, Mayor, or for the city of St. Louis.
Mr.
And-
Saraceno, I do take a bit of offense to that because there have been several times we've asked questions and they still remain. And yes, Mr. Grill, I have that set of emails right here with my questions unanswered, still remaining here. I do have some additional questions about this particular budget. In particular, with regards to the park rangers and the marshals, I see they've been line itemed out of the budget as they have historically been. Can you speak to that, please?
That would be a question for Mr. Daniels. We'll have to talk to him about it and get an answer for you.
So does the police department no longer plan to protect the city buildings and the parks?
I guess I'm not sure I understand your question. Maybe I can address your question.
They've been line itemed out in the budget as we have always known it.
I mean, I know it's a service the PD provides to the city of St. Louis.
It is a service that the PD performs. And I would argue that all the services that the PD performs are services to the city of St. Louis. And if we're going to start line iteming out whether or not we're protecting parks, are we also gonna line item out whether or not we protect the streets?
Well, I don't think that's the question. I think the question is more of, we have a $16 million internal service fund that is run on by the city anytime they do anything for the city or for the police department. And so I guess the question is that a two-way street when we perform services for the city such as security for City Hall? And I think that's one of the things we want to talk to you about is we're performing these services. We pay for all our services from the city, right? Is the city paying for services that the police department pays, such as security for buildings? And I think that's
I
part
think
of
the
the
question,
reason why
Mr.
it's a
Graville, is whether or
discussion.
not that's a duty of the police department. That's the
provide
question here. Is it a
security.
duty of the police department? And if what we're going to do is say, well, city, we're not sure we're gonna protect this street over here or this neighborhood over here.
Well, I don't think it's about streets or neighborhoods.
If
I
it's
think
about parks and if it's about specific buildings, that's a question of whether or not that's a duty of the police department.
We just provided the estimate today. We go on through this, and these are the conversations we have.
On another big topic here, we have almost a 100 increase in the salary line for the police department. Can you speak to that, please?
Well, I think the goal is to, at some point, depending on what the allocation is, and to build towards a more market competitive pay structure for the officers, to deal with some of the compression issues that have built up with the command staff and the lieutenants. We've tried to kind of piecemeal it, but it may not be possible because Paul's number may be correct. I'm not saying you're not correct. I'm saying at this point we don't agree because we're doing our research and hopefully we're going to be working with the state auditor to understand this. But the idea is to become more market competitive as a department in a market that has skyrocketed over the last 6 to 7 years.
With regards to your initial question, your initial position that this is the certified expenses for the department, there are no line items in here for pension costs, the extremely expensive line item for retiree health insurance, which exceeds $14 million. Can you speak to why those costs are not accounted for in this budget?
That's just us following the statute, trying to follow the statute with regards to the statute explicitly says that is not part of our allocation. And so we were trying to give our expenses for the operation of the department because it does not come out of our allocation to represent, what our expenses actually are.
But Mr. Gravel, I have the statute here. The
it?
statute does speak to whether or not the pension costs come out of the 25% or the 20-some-odd% required allocation, but it very clearly states, it shall be the duty of said boards annually on or before the last day of February of each year to prepare in writing on such forms as may be prescribed for budget preparation purposes by such cities for departments of city government an estimate of the sum of money which shall be necessary for the subsequent fiscal year to enable them to discharge the duties and hereby impose upon them and meet the expenses of the police department. Those are expenses of the police
I know, but
department.
what does the
Whether
next
or not,
sentence say?
Mr. Gravel, whether or not they, according to state statute,
What the next
whether or
sentence
not
says
they,
it's
according to
excluded,
state
that those two
statute,
things are excluded.
calculate, they are not, Mr. Gravel. They are expenses of the police department, whether or not they are utilized in the calculation. Paul, can you speak to this, please?
Yeah, I think you're confusing 2 points. You need to include everything you need to cover in your budget for next fiscal year. As to the percentage calculation, those exclude pension costs. Retirement costs are excluded from the percentage, but they're not excluded from the budget. Those are expenses you have to pay, and they have to be appropriated. So you can't just take them out. I mean, so there's two different things. They said, and if you look at the statute, Mr. Gravel, you'll see for the purposes of the calculation. It doesn't say take them out of the budget. It just says for the purposes of the calculation. So that's the difference.
And so they really got to be included in here, and they, tell a pretty grim story about what this proposed budget would do to the city of St. Louis. When you look at the additional $48 to $72 million of expenses, we don't have those funds sitting around. We created a budget that was based largely on last year's police department functions, staffing, and the expenses. And look, I want to continue that. The work that the chief and the police department is doing is excellent. The crime numbers speak for themselves. In the days following the tornado, the police department, no doubt, saved lives. I mean, working around the clock. And I proudly stood with the police department, as I still do.
I don't,
But the reality is that we have to build trust here, and failing to be transparent and collaborative with the city is doing the opposite. And this budget is a real slap in the face to the city workers who work in every other department, who not only deserve raises as well, but deserve to keep their jobs. This budget would absolutely decimate the city's ability to do basic city services across the board. And it was made without consulting Mr. Payne in any meaningful way on how this would impact the rest of the duties that the city has to deliver to its citizens. And that's not only hamstringing the city, it's also degrading the relationship between the public and the police department that we trust to serve us. And that is a disservice to all of us, including the men and women who wear blue here. And so to give this to us just 2 days before the end of the budget cycle with such massive increases, without having the budget director even here or even able to answer questions is a real disservice to the citizens who pay the salaries of all of us, including the police commissioners. By the way, your $1,000 is not included in the budget.
wait.
Mr. Payne, I have a question. At any time when through your process, when you're reading your statutes, is there ever a time that you're questioning how you're reading the statute? Is it ever? And I'll elaborate so that even further on our end. Certainly not anywhere near to the level of you or Dave Diener, but just being in these meetings and hearing numbers and trying to understand things that are going on. A lot of times what I have found or heard, it seems like there was a lot of discrepancy on how we were looking at certain statutes, how we were reading those or understanding those. And in that process, I think that is where you could find, if in the event there were excess monies, if in the event there is, that there is some of those monies found in us not truly grasping yet until we got our hands grasped around it, because I think we have a duty to the Metropolitan Police Department as we're doing this to start, right out the bat, we're gonna set a precedent. And if we just kind of go at it and just hope for the best, we're not, on toward for the police department, that's not in their best, in the police department's best interest. So my question is, I felt like I heard a lot in meetings of us not grasping 100%, but then trying to figure out how certain state statutes are read or are read. And in the process of doing that, those were a lot of the times where I feel like monies that maybe would bring it down or up or whatever. So I don't know in your process if you found that as well, maybe to where there was some, you're not real sure on some things. I don't know, but I'm trying to bring this back to center to say, this is not a deal where this board here, everyone sitting up here wants to push the rock in the same direction. We understand what the mayor is up against, but at the same time, we are also trying to make sure as we set precedent coming out the gate, that we're setting the correct precedent for the St. Louis, Missouri Police Department. So if you could answer that, please.
Well, all I could tell you is that in a large part of it is just from experience, because particularly like with the Convention and Tourism Fund, those special funds, I know what those sources are and how they've been acted, because they've been budgeted for years. Other things, if they're questionable, that's a legal question, and ask the city councilor's office for some guidance. But it's a combination of those two things, I believe.
So it comes back to, for us anyway, I think when we were trying to look at it, it becomes a legal question of, I don't even know if it's like, just it's understanding the statute. That's, and I think the more we're able to do that together, and then the easier this streamlines and becomes. We are here with you, not against you.
Again, I think that the key word "with" needs to be in actions and working relationship with Mr. Payne.
No.
And that has been a failure to this point. And we've got to rectify that if we're going to work together.
And I may add that I do, as you took offense, I do take offense that this board isn't, to be said that we're not acting in a collaborative, spirited manner it's not a true,
It's disingenuous.
it's not true.
It's not been my experience, Mr. Saraceno, with all due respect. And I will point to many emails and questions that remain here.
And we can do the same thing, and it's not what we're doing here today. The objective was that we had a responsibility to turn in an estimated sum of money necessary to meet the expenses of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. That is what the fact of it is, that is what we worked diligently for many nights and days to do, and that's what we are presenting. The opportunity to move forward in these discussions necessary to bring a collaborative budget that we can live with is our next steps. And I'd like to move that forward, understanding where we are. And that's where I'd like to bring this.
But I'm not sure how you can classify something as collaborative that we received at 6 p.m. last night. We were assured Mr. Daniels would be here to answer our questions today, so we could talk through some of these. And I just fail to see how that is collaborative. When you've got questions about some of these funds, sharing that information. We put our cards on the table. We've been asking the same of this body and the director of budget, who's been working on this exactly the same amount of time as Mr. Paul Payne, and has come to conclusions and put cards on the table. If we're going to be collaborative, we've got to actually be collaborative and work across this divide here. And that hasn't been the experience. That has just been the experience that we've had. Paul, has there ever been an instance where you have not responded to a question that's been asked by this board? Or
No,
by Mr. Daniels?
as I've said before, in terms of working with the police department in the past, I've always had a good relationship with Dave. I've known him for 30 years, and he would call me, I would call him, and that's all it was. So if there's any other misrepresentation on that relationship, that's unfortunate, because
But I'd like to also add that I think when you talk about your cards, I think we're all dealing from the same deck. So I don't know, it's just, I think we all are trying to accomplish the same thing, bring the best public safety for the city of St. Louis in a manner in which is affordable for us. So I'm looking, we have a motion by Commissioner Ortega, or a motion by Commissioner McVeigh, a second by Commissioner Ortega to move to turn this in as our,
May I
certifi-
ask a
yes.
clarification question?
please.
With regards to the motion before us today, what is the expectation of the work product moving forward? If this is what is the next step for this document as is considered by the Board of Police Commissioners today?
Then,
That's a great question.
and that's a good question. I'd like to,
And what I would say is what we've kind of talked about is obviously, you know, we're gonna ask for some help because we are going through a state audit to try to figure out these general revenue funds versus special revenue funds and, you know, some of the case law related to that. And hopefully get to an understanding of all these funds. I mean, I think that's where we have the biggest gap is understanding these withdrawal of these funds and, you know, it's a lot of work. And I appreciate all the work you've done there, Paul, because I know it's been a lot of work for me, it's had been a lot of work for you. The idea is that hopefully we're getting together and talking about these numbers, talking about this. I mean, I think the hardest part for, I don't wanna speak for Dave, but I think what Dave struggled with is not really knowing exactly what to budget to. And preliminarily, us looking at this, not seeing this as 25.3%, but maybe less, but not being totally sure of it because we don't know the funds, is sitting down and talking about some of these questions we have, maybe sharing information regarding these funds so we can do our due diligence on that. And just really getting down and understanding the allocation piece and seeing if we can get to a mutual understanding of how the allocation works. So that, I think, is the immediate goal. And then us working, you know, to reduce our budget if necessary for purposes of meeting that allocation. And so I think our approach has been, because of the timeliness of things and whatnot and information when we received it, is, you know, we have to call a little bit of an audible, certify our expenses, and then work with the city to get our budget, hopefully to a agreeable, mutually understandable allocation.
so at the end of the day, we would meet tomorrow and going forth as much as we had to get an understanding of where we have our misunderstandings and then work towards getting the budget that works for both.
When can we anticipate that? The challenge that we have, as
What's-
you can imagine, Mr. Daniels has one very large department, and it's a very important department, but Paul has 28 departments, and, you know, the budget department is Paul and one other staff person, more or less, two. One has been out because the building fell apart on the office, literally. You know, so we can't hold up our city's budget process for long. Paul has to budget for the entire city department, and this budget, make no mistake, would cripple the city of St. Louis. It would cripple our ability to function as a municipal government. And so we have got to have some resolution on some of these issues, and we've got to have it very quickly, because otherwise I'm gonna be looking at my streets department, my refuse department, and every other city department and making massive layoffs.
As soon as we can start.
I need a timeline here because we have got a serious amount of work to do. And again, if we're gonna be collaborative, having a budget with literally 17 hours to take a look at it in advance of a meeting, a public hearing like this, is just not acceptable. We've gotta have a working relationship. I can't for the life of me fathom why there was no collaboration done up until this point. And the collaboration's gonna happen forward. So if I could get, the city deserves a timeline here.
Well, the budget is due at the end of the month. The budget is due before the end of, we naturally have a timeline that's in place. My understanding of the city's process is a lot of departments are going through their own adjustments now. Is that correct,
Correct.
Paul? You know, similar to what I don't know that we're as far behind, because my understanding is the other departments submit budgets over what their allocation would be, and then they make adjustments, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, the similar thing with the other departments is they're working with the city and Paul to reduce a budget that is over their allocation. I think we're in a similar situation.
This is
And-
vastly different than those,
I-
by the
I-
way,
Understand,
but yes.
understand a similar type situation, maybe we're a step or two behind, I think, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we are clear on our legal interpretation, we can share information, and hopefully we have an understanding in the next 2 to 3 weeks, so then we can go back and look at our expenses and see if they need to be reduced.
But
So-
Mr. Grabil, this is unfortunately, the challenge that we have is that those negotiations with our other city departments are based on a budget as we presented here to you. That is very, very different. Again, between $50 and $70 million different than the budget that you have. And so that work that we're doing on our departments, other departments, is directly related to this work. And, unfortunately, being slapped with these massive financial decisions that this board makes has massive repercussions in the city government. It gave me great honor. I'm glad to see that our police department got raises, that this board made a choice to do without any collaboration or communication with the budget director or the city in any way, shape, or form. And the ricochet, the ramifications through every other city department have been massive. And so we have a history here of disregard to how the decisions this board makes, how they impact the rest of our city operations and the rest of our city employees. And we can't continue this way.
Mr. Payne, what would that timeline look like for you? What is those types of things? Can we start there? Because we've reiterated the point, and so let's move forward to kind of help us with the timeline so we can collaboratively work together to reach these goals that we need to reach. Please,
Typically,
you.
by the first week of April, I need to have a balanced budget.
Okay.
Now, I present the
Thank you.
budget in mid-April to the Board of E&A, so that's the timeline we're on.
But
So-
all these other negotiations in the meantime, if there's gonna be wild swings in them, these are conversations that we need to have today.
Mr. Payne, if April is your timeline, right? Through March, are we able to be able to get together as we move?
Well, one way or the other, I gotta have a balanced budget.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
either you guys are gonna do it or I'm gonna do it, one way or the other.
Well, we can have that discussion.
Yeah.
Mhm. So you're talking, April is your
Yeah.
deadline with us, although we have through June to continue to have it submitted, but we will. So understanding that puts a little bit, does the rest of the board that has contributed the numerous hours that have committed to this project, we will work to do that, correct? Do I have agreement from the board to do so?
Yes.
I have agreement, and we'll work to Mr. Daniels to make sure his health gets back up, to that. I think was worked emotionally, and it was a hard situation for him to leave today, but he had to leave, and for his best interest. So we understand that. Again, understanding your timeline, thank you for coming up today.
Sure. Thank you, Mr.
And-
Payne.
and Mr.
Sure.
Payne, seriously, to
Right.
clarify the
welcome.
necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Communications.
And so,
Before this, again, the issue remains that this does not include all the expenses of the police department. As required by statute, all expenses are necessary as part of the budget process. So there will be tens of millions of dollars left out of the required expenses, the expenses as contemplated here, regardless of what we think about the other additional additions, the massive additions to fleet and other expenses here as outlined in this proposed budget. There are massive expenses missing. And so there is no department there is no other mechanism, there's no other department set up in city government to pay the lifelong health benefits that the retired police department has. There is no other department or other line item in any other budget to carry the pension costs or the FICA costs or all the other massive costs that are not included in this budget as presented here today. And so the expenses are not whole. We know that, and I would ask that this board do its due diligence in including all of the items, all of the expenses of the police department as required by state statute.
thank you. I just want to add a statement here. I appreciate the work of the finance commissioners, the director of finance in preparing this estimate based on the council's memorandum outlining the documented uncertainty in the calculation methodology under chapter 84. I understand today's actions to be a certification of the estimate required by the statute, not a final reconciliation of the allocation methodology. The amount reflects the board's good faith interpretation of the statutory requirements based on the revenue presented. Any discrepancies will be resolved through documentation and continued cooperation. I appreciate everybody's work through this process, okay? I'm gonna move this to this as to a vote. And we have a second. Can we move to a vote?
Commissioner Saraceno?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Artiga?
Aye.
Commissioner McVeigh?
Aye.
Mayor Spencer?
No.
4-1, motion carries. That was, can we bring up the next resolution regarding University of Chicago data sharing? Can you read that, please? Thank you. Or Mr. Sullivan, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan to talk about first?
Please.
Good afternoon. This is, we're gonna provide crime data to the University of Chicago, and they're gonna hope to help us with police effectiveness and prevent violent crime and build a good relationship with the community is what it's gonna do.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
And there's no financial impact at
No
all.
financial impact. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Appreciate that.
Resolution 2607, whereas the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners have determined to be in the best interest of the board to adopt the following resolution. The board has reviewed certain contract agreements and memorandums of understanding as its February 25th, 2026 board meeting, and the board has approved the agreements which have been attached hereto as Exhibit A, and authorized the chief of police to execute agreements on behalf of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, and the agreements attached hereto are incorporated herein as Exhibit A, are provided to the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners, and that the chief of police shall be authorized to execute the agreements attached hereto incorporated here in Exhibit A.
Thank you. Motion for that resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Make a
I'll
motion
second.
by Commissioner
This is-
Ortega.
For
University of Chicago data.
still number one.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Ortega, second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion on that? Seeing no discussion, we'll move for a vote.
Commissioner Saraceno?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Artiga?
Aye.
Commissioner McVeigh?
Aye.
Mayor Spencer?
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Resolution carries, thank you. Resolution number 3, requiring all claims and expenses presented to the board to be certified by the president and secretary. Pardon me? We did that?
I didn't say.
No, I
No.
didn't. We did 1 and 2. We're on the resolution number 3, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, would you like to read that resolution, please?
Again, this is resolution 26-09. Whereas the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners has determined it to be in the best interest of the board to adopt the following resolutions and the revised statutes of Missouri Chapter 84, Section 84.210 provides that the board shall pass upon all claims presented against them for the expenses incurred in the discharge of their duties, and shall certify by the president and secretary all such claims as are entitled to payment, and charges by the city of St. Louis against the internal service funds are not being presented to the board as claims and expenses for certification under section 84.210.2, and the board desires for any changes against the internal services funds to be presented to the board as claims and expenses for certification under section 84.210.2. That prior to any changes being made against the Internal Services Fund, the board shall first receive an itemized claim from the city for all charges and expenses and any services provided, the city services claim, and that the department's director of budget and finance shall submit the city services claims to the board for review at the next available meeting of the board following receipt of a city services claim, and that a copy of this resolution shall be open to the public for inspection. And that a copy of this resolution shall be provided to the city's budget division director, comptroller, and city council.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion on that resolution?
I second it.
Motion by Commissioner Ortega, second by Commissioner Gray, discussion?
Yes, I take issue with the third whereas clause stating that the city of St. Louis are not being presented by the board. This is an accusation against the city. As you may know, I'm assuming this is related to funds that were allocated to the police department specifically for litigation matters. And they were put in a fund by the comptroller of the city of St. Louis for that purpose. And the charges that the city is not presenting claims and expenses, there have been no claims or expenses, simply the protection of funds that were allocated in the budget for litigation matters to be safeguarded in that fund so that we can pay out litigation matters. There's still a remaining question on the responsibility, the financial responsibility of those litigation matters of ongoing cases, of which we have dozens, quite many. And as we have worked in earnest with the Attorney General to get to an understanding on that matter, there still isn't resolution. But at the end of the day, the city, we still have many, many cases outstanding for which there's a large litigation financial obligation. And so, again, I think this is worded in such a negative manner that didn't need to be the case. It's an accusatory manner that are not being presented. You know, we are, again, collaborative and communicative, and those funds were specifically allocated for litigation matters.
Would anybody like
If I
to
can
respond on that?
Real quick,
Yes.
we had a $16 million internal service fund that, as we moved in, we can address that. It's not really about that.
Yeah.
It's more of, you know, the fact of the matter is that this board will have to certify expenses. There's $16 million. I don't call out my numbers or that, but Paul's still here, but I think 10 million. The way the internal service fund works is that the money is automatically withdrawn from where whoever is the payee on that, where they withdraw those funds without any approval. I don't think that's set up with the internal service fund. It satisfies the statutory requirement that is mentioned in here. Those funds, aside from the situation, we can talk about that with regards to the $4 million in settlement funds that was out of the city's allocation for last year. You know, it's having the ability to look at what these claims are and these bills are as they're presented. This is the body that administers those funds. It becomes the board's funds once that allocation is met, and they have the right to review those billing records. And we've not done that because it's not work. It wouldn't have made sense to work, but as we move into the next budget year and whatnot, I think all of those charges have to comply with 84.210. So.
It's a compliance.
So when it says in here, charges against are not being presented to the board, I mean, that's been happening for 6-7 months where the money gets, those claims for charges out of the internal service fund do not get presented to the board. They never have.
Have those funds or those been requested?
For submittal.
Has it been requested, Mr. Gravel?
I believe it has.
If-
We have a very limited view on our internal service funds. We can see what the balance is, but we can't see what the withdrawals are.
Okay.
And so that might resolve it as well, or that might help resolve it, but ultimately the statute requires its own sovereignty. And when a bill is charged against this Board of Police Commissioners fund, the body has to approve.
Well, I would just ask that this, the resolution here, first of all, I don't believe there's been anything requested that hasn't been met. I will say as well, these typically often go through the comptroller's office rather than the budget director. And so I think it may be helpful if this is not necessary today. I think from a process perspective, having a conversation with both the comptroller and the budget director to best understand how you can get the information you seek and need would be most helpful, because I don't think this is actually the best way to get the information you might seek. The budget director, the department's budget and finance, from a process perspective, Mr. Gravel, I think we should have a conversation with those parties involved to make sure that we're getting what you need. And a conversation would have been helpful with our office or the folks involved before this. We could have maybe worked that out.
Well.
Can you
the
respond?
board, you understand the board has to approve.
Yeah.
all
I
those
understand.
expenditures.
We can,
I understand. I'm talking about from a process perspective. We interpreted this resolution very differently than what you're stating here today based on its language. And therefore, for me, there's clearly a disconnect and a conversation might benefit all of us.
Totally fine with the conversation, but the statute requires the board to pass on all claims before
Yeah.
money is spent. So that's what 84.2 requires. So I don't disagree with you that a conversation would be helpful. But I still think we're in the same place because the statute requires.
from a statute requirement and a process requirement is what we can have discussion, but as from a statute requirement, I think we need to move forward with this resolution. And I have a motion by Commissioner Ortega, second by Commissioner Gray. Any other discussion? Let's call for a vote, please.
Commissioner Saraceno,
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner McVeigh,
Aye.
Mayor Spencer.
Present.
Motion carries. Our last resolution. Number 4 here, resolution designating the Vice President of the Board of Police Commissioners as Government Affair Liaison. Please read the resolution, Lieutenant Telly.
This is resolution 26-10. The St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners has determined it to be in the best interest of the board to adopt the following resolution. Bylaws provide for certain duties for the offices of the President, Vice President, Secretary, and Treasurer of the board. And the bylaws do not specify which officer of the board will serve as the government affairs liaison for the government entities, including the city of St. Louis. And the board desires to designate the vice president of the board as the government liaison. That the vice president of the board shall serve as the government affairs liaison and may correspond and meet with other government entities, including the city of St. Louis. And this resolution is not intended to diminish the ability of or prohibit other members of the board of police commissioners from corresponding and meeting with other government entities, and that a copy of this resolution shall be open to the public for inspection.
So we read the resolution. Do we have a motion to?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Commissioner Brown,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Ortega.
I have
Discussion.
I have a discussion item on this. It wasn't noticed properly. For that purpose, I'd like to maybe raise an objection, but I also will point out that it would be helpful to have a conversation with the government body about this role. In particular, there are some sensitivities here that I think we would be best served to discuss with the government body that we are proposing to have somebody liaison with. I think we could all benefit, including the vice president, having a conversation about it before passing this. And it wasn't noticed properly, Mr. Gravel, so I'll point that out as well.
When you say it wasn't noticed properly, what do you mean?
I think it was added to the agenda last night.
It's,
Or
it was
this
added
morning,
this
or-
morning, but understand
Okay.
under the sunshine law, it's the proposed agenda. You can't add things late.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, I think we would all, in the spirit of collaboration and coordination, it
Well-
would be,
Let me explain to you why we put it on this morning. It's not ideal. We don't necessarily like doing that, but there's been this push for collaboration. There's been a lot of great things happening, great discussions. We're in a new era. We're 2026. It's not what it was before. It's not there, and we're all trying to figure it out. There's been a stress from your office with regards to communication, having somebody identified and whatnot. And I think what the intent of this is to give Commissioner Jenkins Gray the ability to be active in her role and be the representative of the board, whether it's the governor's office, the General Assembly or whatnot, is they have that confidence and trust in her and confidence and trust in her in all public affairs. So, Commissioner Jenkins Gray is not an employee, so we can't go under an exception to discuss an executive session, something that you might have a concern about with regards to being active in that role. It may be something that we could do this and maybe you could talk to Commissioner Jenkins Gray about it, if that's a possibility, if there's some type of concern. But I think really we're trying to meet the city where they're at and your office where they're at by designating somebody to be like, okay, you have somebody to get hold of, you have somebody that's willing to serve in this role, to be the liaison person for the board so that we're constantly having meetings and we're constantly, and Commissioner Jenkins Gray has already started on some of this, and she runs a very tight ship with regards to, we have to have these meetings and these conversations and whatnot. And so as the roles of she is the vice president, as the roles of the Board of Police Commissioners kind of develop, I think that was the intent of it, so we could get somebody that we could present to you to answer questions from the police department and whatnot. You know, because we talk a lot about communication, transparency and whatnot, that I'm trying to meet that.
I appreciate that. And I want to first thank Commissioner Jenkins Gray for stepping up and being willing to serve. It's a big role and it's a big responsibility. I think the challenges for the city, you know, there's a lot of work, as you pointed out, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of these questions are legal questions, and our law department is very involved. And there are active litigation issues with a commissioner and the city. And there have been concerns raised about that, and rightful. I mean, you know, and so there's a concern there, and you know, as well, there are lots of personnel issues and other challenges, and there is a set of relationships that present that I think are worthy of having a conversation, and so you know. Again, it was my hope, it would be my hope that especially if this board is considering assigning anything specifically to interface with the city, that, my gosh, we would just have a conversation, Mr. Gravel. So we could have some of these concerns discussed. And again, I think that failure to notice is problematic. I know that those things happen sometimes. As I mentioned in our E&A hearing, you know, there are always issues that come up, and there are earnest and legal, legitimate ways to address them in hearings. I hear you about that. But again, I'll just point out that a conversation with one of the most important governmental bodies here would have shown a spirit of collaboration that we haven't, would have shown a spirit of collaboration.
Is there any further comments?
I just have a question, Mayor. Is it standard practice, precedent been set where people that serve in elected positions, employees of the city, people that serve on boards and commissions that are in active litigation with the city are therefore treated differently, or their responsibilities reduced because of that?
Shouldn't be, no. I think that would be majorly problematic. Again, I think that my request here was for the respect of having a conversation and a discussion about it. We can have that here, and I do think that there are, you know, again, some concerns have been raised, and I wanted the opportunity to have some discussions about that.
I guess my question would be, not to superimpose, but Commissioner Jenkins Gray, are you comfortable moving forward on this resolution, or do you want some time to have a discussion?
I'm comfortable with moving forward.
Is the board comfortable with moving forward with the resolution, or do you want some time to discuss it?
I have asked for time. I said, as a commissioner, you asked, and I'm stating that I asked for some time to have a conversation about it, Mr. Gravel.
In the spirit of that, if it hasn't been, the resolution that is specified a certain commissioner, but in this case, Commissioner Sonia Gray would continue to serve in a role, just not active in the resolution part of it.
Well,
How does that work?
The resolution seems to be something of a requirement, or at least a request. And what I would suggest is, you know, I hate to not have this liaison with all the things going on in the interactions with the government entities right now. Commissioner Jenkins Gray, I think it's personal to her, and she's comfortable moving forward with it and whatnot. I think we can address any concerns that the city has, and I think we've already tried to address those concerns. I hate to lose a week, which is what we would do, because our meeting next week, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, of communications, with some of the emphasis placed on communications here today. But I think that's the board's protocol with regards to it. I mean, I think you've heard from, you know, the people involved in it. There are more than just the city of St. Louis communications that are occurring
Understand.
right now. So whether it's the auditor or the governor's office or the attorney general and whatnot. So, you know, if I think this would give her I think it would make her feel a lot more comfortable, not to speak for you, to, you know, I know the board has the full confidence in her as well. So.
Commissioner, could you add to that?
I agree with Attorney Graville.
Yeah.
I have operated in its capacity for the last several weeks or so, and I've been very astute with making sure that I maintain my professionalism. When suggestions are made from the mayor's office, I take those into considerations and I modify my actions according to that and according to the request. The fact that there appears to be some concerns from somewhere, I don't know if those concerns are necessarily being driven by my performance in this role or because of other reasons or issues. Anything that is dealing with personal issues should not be brought into this setting or into this, the duties and the responsibilities that the board has been given and the responsibilities that I have been given. I am completely confident in my ability. I believe that in that role, I have served a purpose to help expedite things that have occurred within the board to get them through to the end. At the end of the day, my focus is on this department and this board and operating within the governance that has been established and the oversight that has been provided to me and the confidence that has been provided to me by my fellow commissioners and by President Saraceno.
Commissioner, I want to thank you for hearing some of the concerns. You pointed some of those out and adjusting. And that was, we were grateful for that. I think anytime we have commissioners interfacing with city employees, particularly ones that used to have a reporting structure involved, it's important that we have some clarity there. And I appreciate you hearing our concerns and adjusting accordingly. This isn't personal. I know Mr. Grola classified it as such. It's not personal, but we were assured it's not personal.
I didn't mean to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's not personal at all. I wanted to clarify that. We had a quick offline conversation and we're assured that we could just have some conversations this week. I'm sorry that that's apparently no longer the case, and the board will proceed.
I'll add that Commissioner Sonia Gray has been a tremendous help to assist me in with regards to the much time that it takes to serve on this board in this capacity, and I feel that she is necessary for us to move forward, and especially to help me that I can't get back to some of these folks, and she does it in our behalf. So I'm going to move for the vote on the resolution.
Commissioner Saraceno?
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobs-Gray?
Abstain.
Commissioner Artiga?
Aye.
Commissioner McVeigh?
Aye.
Mayor Spencer?
Present.
3-1-1.
3-1. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Chief's report. Chief Tracy, thank you. Good afternoon,
Good
Chief.
afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, President, board members, board secretary, and board lawyer. We've gone over these numbers extensively, did our end of the year report, so I'm ready to report year to date out and then open up for any questions, specific questions you might have. So looking at our murder numbers, you see our murder numbers. We have 12 this year versus 14 last year, versus 30 in 2024, versus 23 in 2023, versus 20 in 2022, and versus 30 that we had in 2021. So we're actually following the path we have for the last few years with the downward trend, looking to continue doing that from the good work that of the men and women of the police department. Overall, year to date, we're down 3% overall UCR crimes. Those are Part 1 crimes, and then down 48% from where we were in 2022. I also take a look at some of the things that come up as of recent. They talk about entertainment district. We talk about downtown, where the revenue's coming in, trying to bring the business in, try to keep the businesses, keep the tourism and everything else. Year to date, we're down from downtown. At this time, we're down 48% from where we were 2022, and we're down 61% from 2022, 5% from last year. So the biggest concern that I hear in some of the community meetings, especially all over the city, we make sure we take care of the rest of the city. We do not forget about that, although we got to take care of downtown, is always the omnipresence. We're getting the crime numbers down, but we certainly need to get men and women get back up to what a budget strength was about. We had 1,100 was a budget strength a couple of years ago. I know we're looking at that. This raises should help us with recruitment, and then our HR office taking upon those obligations to bring people in, hire people through our HR director, Sarah Koziaki, who's here today, and we're looking to streamline that. And so we're going to get that information out, and even my conversations with the St. Louis Police Officers Associations, there seem to be they voted almost unanimously, a small percentage voted against it for the contract that the board presented, working well with the Police Officers Association. So I think all that, and then over 40 officers coming back that used to work for us is showing that people are coming back before this raise, and hopefully we can build off that to start bringing the strength back, get that omnipresence downtown, where it's a delicate balance between the rest of the city downtown. The numbers are showing that, but the skepticism sometimes, and not seeing the omnipresence, the perception of people seeing things, it takes a long time to catch up, but hopefully we can get there. And that's some of the challenges that we have at this time, but we're continuing the downward trend from where we were for a few years ago. So with that, I'll stop and open up to any questions.
Thank you for the report, Chief. Commissioners, any questions for Chief Tracy?
Great work.
President, just I always say this, all these numbers that I'm talking about, they are on our website. It's been revamped, it's transparent. So you don't have to wait for the chief. I put things in context, but people certainly can get everything that I'm reading you right now, right off slmpd.org/stats. Please go on it. I encourage the media to get on it. I encourage everybody in this room. A more informed St. Louis is a safer St. Louis, working together to drive crime down. So thank you.
Thank
you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, agenda item number 8, any announcements from the board?
I have an announcement I'd like to make.
Mayor?
I'm gonna hand these out for consideration of the board. Under state law, we have, let's see, let's cross these all out here. Under Rule 7, as you may know, which is currently in effect, the
Keep going.
police manual provides for the mayor of the city of St. Louis to nominate individuals to the state board of police commissioners for a civilian review board. And out of respect for the board, I'd like to present a proposed slate of candidates for your consideration. I'm not asking for a vote today. I wouldn't do that, but rather for consideration at our next board meeting. You'll find a slate of 7 CRB nominees for this board's confirmation at our next meeting. And I've also included the current language within Rule 7 that provides for this. And a copy of the state law authorizing the city to provide for a civilian review board.
Thank you,
I
Mayor.
think anytime we can add, bring citizens into the review process is welcome, and look forward to discussion next week.
So, if I can address this, this has been a question that has come about, a question that Commissioner Jenkins-Gray has been, we have discussed at length with regards to the fitting of the civilian review board. You do have the statute in there that talks about this. I have done a complete analysis on this, and I do not believe under the iteration of Chapter 84, there would have to be some statutory changes, because as you all will recall, and as we work through this in the labor management meeting, is you have Rule 7, which is one law, Chapter 84, and the Police Officer Bill of Rights that are not merged together in the statute. That's why Rule 7 has taken so long, is we've had to merge those all together. I do not believe, it is my legal opinion as general counsel, that we can have a citizen review board in the context of the way it was done before, where they reviewed officer cases. There's a couple of different reasons for that. The statute is very specific in Chapter 84 as to who can review police officer discipline. Also, under the Police Officer Bill of Rights, it's very clear that anything involving discipline is confidential and not even subject to the Sunshine Law. So you have public individuals who who are not statutorily granted the authority under Chapter 84 to review disciplinary cases. And ultimately, we've talked, and I've talked to Commissioner Jenkins-Gray about how can we involve citizens in it. What we've talked about is, although we may not be able to do a citizen review board, is there a citizen board we can put together for purposes of looking at our discipline policies, reviewing statistical reviews at the end of the year that we're gonna work with as we set up our discipline process. So I totally understand this, I respect it, I've had many debates about this, many people asking me questions. But the CRB is not something that can just be transposed, the body has to legislate it. The CRB is much different in the Rule 7 than it was previous iteration. I would also point out that you all are citizens of the city of St. Louis, that you are a citizen review board. What is different is who chooses who is on the citizen review board. Ultimately, you all have committed to not only, although the statute allows you all to delegate hearing authority to hearing officers, but you all have committed to, you all are gonna hear appeals, and we're gonna start that process probably sooner than later. I would ask for the patience of the board as we continue to kind of build this house as we live in it. This is something that Commissioner Jenkins-Gray and I have had conversations very much in making sure that a citizen board can have an impact and be part of the review process. I just do not believe it can be part of the individual process. You all are the citizen review board under Chapter 84. You all have the authority to review the discipline, and you only have the authority to delegate it to hearing officers. And so is there a different methodology and way, even with these 7 individuals, that we can work on a situation in which we can review trends, we can review practices, patterns, training, and whatnot in a more ambiguous sense that does not go to that individual officer. And it's just going to be something that's going to be a project that takes time, and that's what I've discussed with Commissioner Jenkins-Gray, and we've debated it at length and whatnot. But the way we are formed, it does not work, in my legal opinion, with the structure. But there is an intent to involve a civilian group. That is something. Probably what we would do is take that idea to labor management, and I would want whatever we decide to do, this to be sent down to a committee so that our committees can look at this, debate it, and talk about it as well.
Well, Mr. Gravelle, I understand that, and this is the first, well, if you're having debates about this, I'm very curious to learn about them and to hear your perspective beyond what you just stated here. Our city attorney has a different opinion, a legal opinion, and look, my goal here is to increase transparency and citizen involvement, and I think we should all welcome that. The board, as I presented the slate, are folks that many of you know probably well, and have a tremendous amount of respect for. This is a board that I think will improve the relationship between the police department and the community as we move into a new era here with state control of the police department. Continuing to have civilian involvement is critical, I believe, to continuing to build on the trust that the police department, the excellent work of the SLMPD does to build trust within the community. And with all due respect, as a commissioner, I'm asking that this goes on next week's agenda. Thank you.
Everything has gone through committees, or is intended to go to committees. I don't think it would be fair when labor management has spent the number of hours they've spent on reviewing Rule 7 and they're almost complete.
I'm happy to attend next week's meeting then, but I am respectfully asking that this goes on the next agenda.
It's my legal opinion, you can't do it. I respect Mr. Garvin and whatnot, and it's been something we've done an in-depth dive in. And so I don't think we can do it. I don't know why it would go on the agenda if we can't do it. And I think
The discussion of this is my request to be on the agenda for next week, Mr.
the
DeVille.
concept of some type of modification to Rule 7 without going through labor management, I think is not appropriate with the way that.
I'm not suggesting that we modify Rule 7.
I think it's already been modified. And then I think there's a discussion.
I'm not here to debate, Mr. DeVille. I just had an announcement to make, and I presented and distributed to the board. I don't want to have a legal argument with you here right now.
I give my legal opinion.
Excellent.
Thank you. Okay, that was the announcement from Mayor.
Hmm.
Okay. Vote to enter an executive session following the adjournment. Yes, oh, did you have?
You have to move first.
Yeah,
make that motion.
make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
We're going to make a motion to go into
Executive session.
Yeah.
We have a motion to go into executive session.
Pursuant to-
Was it Ortega? I don't know. He
Well,
was
we
like-
gotta announce the reason,
Okay.
610.
Yes,
1,
and
610,
Executive,
and
610,
Mr. Reville, Commissioner Gray was going to make that announcement.
oh, you're fine. Based on RSMO 610.021, legal actions, cause of action, or litigation involving a public governmental body, and any confidential or privileged communications between a public governmental body or its representatives and its attorneys. Second, the board can go into executive session under RSMO. Third, the board can go into executive session under RSMO 610.0213, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of particular employees by a public governmental body when personal information about the employee is discussed or recorded. Fourth, the board can go into executive session under RSMO 610.02113, individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment.
Okay. So the motion is read. Voice vote or a roll call vote? Mr. Reville?
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Saraceno,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobs Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Artiga, Commissioner McVeigh,
Aye.
Mayor Spencer.
Right.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.